Hello, we continue with completing the cans and we are looking at the next domain. We are going to be reviewing, which is the child behavioral emotional needs. I'm going to start with the first item, which is psychosis. Zero is generally no evidence, and I'm really tempted to start with saying all of the zeros will be no evidence, and just avoid discussing that any longer, but we'll see how it goes. 1. There's a history of suspicion, and you can see the pattern already. That 1 is history of, in this case, is hallucinations, delusions, or bizarre behavior that might be associated with some form of psychotic disorder, but there's no real evidence. 2, there is clear evidence of hallucinations, delusions, or bizarre behavior that might be associated with some form of psychotic disorder. So what we have are the positive symptoms, the hallucinations, delusions, or bizarre behavior, but we don't have really the diagnosis. And in 3, we have the hallucinations, delusions, or bizarre behaviors, but in 3, they're dangerous. So it's clear evidence that these positive symptoms are the dangerous type, and that they also might be associated with some form of psychotic disorder, but because of the dangerousness of these positive symptoms, the child is at risk of physical harm, or the child is placing others at risk of physical harm. The next item is impulsivity or hyperactivity. And 0, no evidence. 1, some problems with those behaviors such as impulsivity, distractibility, or hyperactivity, and this place the child at risk of future functioning difficulties. It's not now. 2 is clear evidence of those problems, and these problems interfere in the now with the child's ability to function in at least one life domain. That's the main difference with 3. The other difference is the dangerousness of the behaviors. There's clear evidence that those behaviors have a dangerousness level, and these behaviors place the child at risk of physical harm. The next item is depression. Depression and anxiety have very much the same criteria. Actually, depression, anxiety, and oppositional have the same criteria. So I am going to go through them at the same time, and here you have them on the screen. 0 is no evidence for the 3 of them. 1 is history or suspicion of depression or mild to moderate depression associated with a recent negative life event with minimal impact on life domain functioning. Likewise, in anxiety, it's a history or suspicion of anxiety with mild or moderate anxiety associated with a negative life event. And in the positional, that changes a bit. In 2, both for anxiety and depression, is clear evidence of depression as associated with either depressed mood or significant irritability. Remember that in children, depression may manifest as anger or irritability. And the depression has interfered significantly in the child's ability to function in at least one life domain. So 2 for anxiety is, again, clear evidence of anxiety associated with either anxious mood or significant fearfulness. So anxiety can show as fearfulness in children, and it has interfered again significantly with the child's ability to function in at least one life domain, just as in depression. And with 3, the depression is disabling, and it makes it virtually impossible for the child to function in any life domain. Similarly or equally with anxiety, it's debilitating to the point that it makes it virtually impossible for the child to function in any life domain. With the oppositional 0, no evidence. 1 is history or recent onset in the past 6 weeks of defiance towards authority figures. So the history can be as recent as past 6 weeks. And what we need is defiance towards authority figures of all the criteria of oppositional. In 2, there's clear evidence of oppositionalism and or defiant behavior towards authority figures and interferes with the child's functioning in at least one life domain. And the behavior causes emotional harm to others. So that behavior is such that someone is being emotionally harmed. In 3, there's clear evidence of a dangerous level of oppositional behavior, and that dangerousness can be represented in the threat of physical harm to others. It doesn't need to be manifested in actual dangerous behaviors, but just the threat of physical harm to others, like, I'm going to beat you up, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to do this or that to you or your family or your friends, etc. The next item is conduct, and 0, not surprisingly, is no evidence. 1 is history or suspicion of problems associated with antisocial behavior, and remember that the DSM-5 allows for children to be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. So in 1, it's a history or suspicion of problems associated with antisocial behavior, including but not limited to lying, stealing, manipulating others, sexual aggression, violence towards people, property, or animals. Very much like in anxiety and oppositional and depression, for 2, we have to have a clear evidence of those behaviors. And in 3, there's evidence of severe level of those behaviors. And those behaviors place the child or the community at significant risk of physical harm due to these behaviors. So 3 doesn't mean that the harm has been done or the child does harm, just the risk of physical harm due to those behaviors is a 3. The next one is adjustment to trauma, and with this item and the 2 supplemental modules, we're going to end this video. So in adjustment to trauma, we have 0, no evidence. 1, history or suspicion of problems associated with traumatic life events, right? Traumatic life events. 2 is a clear evidence of adjustment problems associated with traumatic life events, and you see the pattern, right? In all of these behavioral emotional needs, 2 starts with a clear evidence of, and the adjustment is interfering with functioning in at least 1 life domain, just like above. In 3, there's clear evidence of post-traumatic stress disorder, of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And we don't have to have the whole criteria, but symptoms of PTSD. It may include flashbacks, nightmares, significant anxiety, and intrusive thoughts of trauma experience. So as I said, this triggers the supplemental modules, and it's called trauma module. So these are the questions we have to ask, and I will show you on the back of your cans. You have the trauma module, and there you see it on your right. All right, so the trauma module, if the child scores 1, 2, or 3 on the first item, which is sexual abuse, it triggers the sexual abuse supplemental module. So here we go. Sexual abuse, 0, no evidence. 1 episode of sexual abuse, or there is a suspicion that the child has experienced sexual abuse but no confirming evidence. So suspicion or 1 episode. 2, repeated sexual abuse. 3, severe and or repeated sexual abuse. The criteria is interesting, right? 2 is repeated, 3 is severe or repeated. And in 3, the sexual abuse may have caused physical harm. So as I said, that module triggers a subsequent module which has these 5 items, and the 5 items are emotional closeness to the perpetrator. In 0, the perpetrator was a stranger at the time of the abuse. That's the least damaging of all. In 1, the perpetrator was known to the child at the time of the event only as an acquaintance. In 2, there was a close relationship like teacher, coach, mentor, close family friend. And in 3, the perpetrator was a family member with whom the child had a strong and durable emotional bond, like a primary caretaker, parent, sibling. The next one is frequency. 0, abuse occurred at least 1 time. So remember that this is a sub-supplemental, so we know that there was either 1 event or suspicion, right? So 0, abuse occurred at least 1 time. 1, abuse occurred twice. 2, abuse occurred 3 to 10 times. And 3, abuse occurred more than 10 times. Duration of the events. And duration of the events, 0, at least 1 time. 1, within a 6-month period. 2, within a 6-month to 1-year period. and 3, over a period of longer than 1 year. Next one is physical force. And 0, no physical force or threat of force during the abuse episode. 1, sexual abuse was associated with threat of force, but no physical force, so there was threat. In 3, there was physical force used during the abuse, and did I say 3? It was 2. In 2, there was physical force used during the sexual abuse, and in 3, there was significant force or violence during the abuse, and there were physical injuries as a result of the force. And the last one is reaction to disclosure. That is how the family reacted to the disclosure by the child. In 0, everybody's aware and supportive of the child coming forward. In 1, most family members are aware and supportive. 1 or 2 may be less supportive, and there may be anxiety in the parents, depression or guilt regarding the abuse. In 2, there's a significant split among the family members in terms of their support of the child coming forward with a description of the experience, and in 3, there's significant lack of support from close family members of the child because of coming forward with a description of the experience, and the parents' relationship may be significantly threatened. All right, so that's as far as we go with this clip, and the next video will complete the whole domain.